Welcome to Learn It, a series of digital scrapbooking tutorials by Studio Wendy at Scrapbook Graphics. Today we're looking at the double shadow actions, and in my demonstration I'll be using the kit As Long As from Studio Rosy Posy at Scrapbook Graphics. I'm over here in Acrobat to show you the tutorial, the PDF tutorial that comes along with your download. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because it walks us through what each of the actions does. First of all, the double shadow action is going to add 2 shadows to your element or paper layer. For each of the types of shadows here, the angles, you will get a paper option and an embellishment option. The paper option is just a lighter weight shadow. It is closer to the object than the embellishment version of the same action. So there's 4 different ones in the set, 1, 2, 3, and G. 1, 2, and 3 all use the drop shadow layer effect to add the shadows. And what they end up doing is adding a small one at one angle and a larger one directly opposite it. So number 1 is going to add a larger shadow at an angle of 120 degrees and a smaller one opposite it at minus 45 degrees. Double shadow 2 is going to do the exact opposite of that. You're going to get your large shadow at minus 45 degrees and your small, tight shadow at 120 degrees. In double shadow 3, you'll get to choose your angles. So when the dialog box pops up, enter in your angle, and then on the second screen, enter an angle that's opposite of that. And in double shadow G, we are actually using the outer glow command for the second shadow instead of the drop shadow command. And this one also is set to allow you to choose the angles and settings as it runs. Now, Photoshop Elements doesn't have all of the complex options that full Photoshop does, but you will be able to run it and get your images on 2 layers. The main difference is going to be in the Photoshop version, you will end up with one of your shadows on a second layer. In the Elements version, you're going to end up with a duplicated element that has just the shadow below it. So let's pop over to Photoshop and take a look at how they work. I have the actions already loaded, and you'll see here I have double shadow, and then here's the paper and element options for each of the different versions that we just discussed. And here's my layout, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on my flower up here that I want to add a double shadow to. So here's my flower. With that selected, I'm going to select the first double shadow embellishment action and press play. Oh, and I wanted to mention real quick, if you want to add these shadows to more than one layer, you actually want to start from the bottom of your layout and work your way up. And the reason for that is when the action's done running, it's going to select the next layer up. So let me so that you can see it. Let me drag the tag on top for now so that you can watch as we demonstrate. Okay, so here is our flower, and I have the action selected. I'm going to press play. And instantly, you'll see here that if we wanted to continue and run it again, we are already set up to run it on the next element. But let's pop down here and show you what this action actually did. First of all, it took a large shadow here and it put it on its own layer. And then let me turn that one off and turn the element back on. You'll see we also got another bigger shadow that's going the opposite direction. So with both of them on, you kind of have a more realistic shadow in that you have some shadow following all the way around the object. And you can tweak the position of the element or the shadow. If you want to move them separately, they are linked, so go ahead and unlink them on the layers panel here. And then if you wanted to tighten up that additional shadow, you can move it in and out depending on your preference here. And of course, you can also adjust the opacity. It's set quite low at 20%, so you may want to play with how heavy that shadow appears. And the other shadow is left as a layer effect on your actual layer. You can double click that to edit it here. So that's how that one works. Let's go ahead and clear the layer style off of here. Number 2 does the same exact thing. It will just swap the angle that it's running at. So let's run number 3 to show you how you can enter in your own angles. When you press play, the dialog box will pop up here, and you want to adjust your angle right here. So that 120 is the default here. If you have this button checked, use global light, it's going to use the preference that is set in Photoshop for the direction of your light. In my case, it's set at -43 as my global light. You want to make sure that's unchecked. Otherwise, all your shadows are going to go the same layer and you're not going to get the opposite effect here. So if we wanted our shadows going this direction on the page, I can select an angle of 45. And then, of course, I can also select and edit these sliders to get a different distance or size if I want to. And the goal between the two is really to get a tighter shadow around the whole thing and then a larger shadow where the object is actually being cast. So this one's at 50 and we want to make note of that and press OK. Then we're going to get the second shadow pop up here. For that one, I want to choose an angle opposite 50. So it doesn't have to be exact, but just in general, you want it to be opposite on the wheel here than you had before. And then here's where you can really play with how large of a shadow you want for your cast shadow. And you'll see we can really cast it out far and get a dramatic shadow if we want, or pull it in tighter. But this is going to be your larger shadow here. And press OK. And you're all set there. And again, your layers are linked. If you want to move them together, you certainly can. You can just pick that up and they'll both move together. So let's go ahead and delete that and show you the last set. I'm going to clear that layer style. To clear that layer style, I'm right-clicking on the FX icon here and selecting Clear Layer Style. Let's run the glow version that's got the G on here. Press play. And the difference with this one is we still get a drop shadow here on our bottom layer, but we also now have an outer glow. And the outer glow is what we're using for our tighter shadow. And so we can, of course, tweak that in if we don't want it to cast so far out, and play with the opacity if we want to. The difference with the outer glow and the double drop shadow method is with the outer glow, we are actually getting that shadow around the entire element. And then the cast shadow is down here, is only showing up. Let's unlock that. The cast shadow is only going to show up in one direction, whereas that glow is showing up around the whole element. So that's the main difference between that glow setting. So that's how the double shadow action set works. I hope it is double the fun in playing with your shadows and getting them exactly the way you want them. Thanks for watching this episode of Learn It.